Well, hello, welcome to the channel. My name's Johnny, and you're watching Hillbilly Modeling. So this is going to be part 5 of our Standard B Liberty Series 2 World War I US Army Truck by ICM. And in this video, we're going to pick up where we left off in the last one, which is where we were working on that canvas, trying to get that seam filled on either side there where the pieces all go together. We don't want any visible seam there because it's just supposed to be one piece of canvas, more or less. So we need to get that taken care of. And then we're going to start painting. So let's go ahead and jump down to the bench and get to work on this. So here we are with our parts, and we've already got them sanded, and I think we're in good shape, but you never really know until you get some paint on there. So we're going to go ahead and prime this up. And we're going to be using Vallejo's gray primer here. And yeah, that's going to be our base. And it's also going to show us whether or not we've got some issues. Of course, I have gone ahead and thinned this out a little bit for the airbrush. Very important that we don't clog up the airbrush while we're trying to spray this on. So I've got it thinned out here a little bit. So on to the paint booth, and we're going to lay on some of this gray primer. So the ideal here is to get everything unified and allow that putty, which is a water-based putty, to kind of soak up some of this paint, and that'll actually help it harden a little bit for us. So we need to go ahead and do the canvas over top of the cab as well, and really paying attention to making sure that we've got those seam lines primed really good there. And what I'm doing is making sure that everything is covered very well. We end up putting like 3 coats on to make sure that we've got plenty of primer on there. Now with our primer on and dry, you can still kind of see that telltale line where that seam is. And we really don't want that on there because that doesn't look right. And the eye would be drawn to that because it is fairly straight line there right across the canvas. So we're going to need to sand that down. And so I do have a little bit of sandpaper here. Now I'm not using a sanding stick because I don't want to kind of flatten anything. I want to sand across the seam here. And the ideal is to get that sanded down. Now, since we put so much primer on, we should be able just to sand down the primer, and then it kind of act as a filler for us there. Now, of course, you don't want to forget about your cab canvas because that needs to be sanded as well, and paying special attention there to those seam lines. So, with that done, we'll go ahead and coat it again with that gray primer and check out kind of how we did, and it looks pretty decent there. So at this point, we need to get everything ready for painting. So we still got it dry assembled here from our fitting in our last video, making sure that everything, number one, lined up correctly, and for those little special modifications that we made, especially that spreader bar that we put in, that we're going to actually add to the model. So I'm using a large clip here on that center frame member there of our bed, and then that'll help us hold this thing so we can prime that up. When it comes to our radiator, a little cocktail stick or toothpick, if you please, into that bottom radiator hose hole. That'll work. So when it comes to our wheels, normally I like to put these, especially on track vehicles, on a tapered dowel like you see here, and that's holding our rear wheels no problem, but with the front ones, that's not going to work. Yeah, that's just not going to work for us. So I think the best thing to do is just use some tweezers, some self-gripping tweezers here, and we'll just kind of move those around between coats and make sure that we get everything covered there. So that works out good for us. So next up, I'm going to use this double-sided mounting tape here. This is a 3M product Works really good, but it sticks really good too. And I've got this little wooden jig here that I made up for such occasions. And with that mounting tape, sometimes that film that's on it's a little hard to get off. So if you can just use your hobby knife there, you can kind of flip the edge of it a little bit there. Don't use your fingernails because it's even harder if you try to use your fingernails. And you can just flip those off. There we go. And for this, we're just going to stick our seat cushions on. So we have our back cushion and our actual bottom cushion there. And that'll make it much easier for us to paint those. Now when it comes to really small parts, I'm going to roll some low-tack painter's masking tape with sticky side out, place it on a piece of cardboard, and then we can just kind of stick our parts on. And this works really well. But of course, you know, you can't paint but one side at a time like this. So I'll have to make up a second piece of cardboard so that once this side dries, I can flip all these over and put them on a new piece of tape, on a new piece of cardboard, and paint the other side too. And make sure that we get all these small parts primed up. Now when it comes to our exhaust, we do have a bracket there where it attaches to the frame. And I'm just going to put my clamp right there to hold that. So we're going to prime everything except for the canvas with this German dark Panzer Gray. And of course we're going to thin that out for our airbrush as usual. And your mixture is going to be different than mine, but you know, that's fine. Here we are with our engine already primed, and of course we primed the frame and all that other stuff. Going back to our instructions here, I did use a little sticky note here and put all of our color codes on with what they are. That way I can just move this little sticky note on through the manual in order to get, you know, well, whatever colors that the instructions want us to represent here. But, you know, you can use a little bit of artistic license there to decide exactly what colors you want to use in place of whatever their call-outs are. And you guys know me. I'm probably not going to use what they are telling me to use, but I think it's going to look good in the end anyway. So since we're painting the engine, we're going to use some of these reference photos here to help us kind of get an idea of how things are really supposed to look. And as you can see, there are these hoses on, say, our water pump plumbing there, and they have clamps on them, and then we can see our colors there. So the first thing that we're going to do, I guess, is go ahead and paint the block of the engine. And for that, we're going to use this metallic charcoal gray for our steel. So I'm kind of substituting this for their color call-outs, if I can say that. Now, once we spray this, I did try to keep it as much as I could relegated down to where that color, that's, you know, that metallic color is supposed to be. However, we do have a little bit of overspray, and I felt it was just easier for me to go back in and reestablish our flat, well, it's not flat black. I almost said flat black. But this is our Panzer Gray, our dark Panzer Gray. We're using that in lieu of the flat black there. And we can just take care of all of that overspray there on our cylinder heads, because they're supposed to be a much darker flat black color. But of course, I'm not using flat black. We're just going to use that dark Panzer Gray, which is really close to being black in all actuality. So I think it's going to look good on our kit here. And this is the same paint that we use to prime all of our other parts, other than the canvas. We did not use this for the canvas. So we're just going to go ahead and reestablish this. Well, it's a dark, it's a really dark gray, which is, I don't know, a light black. Is there such thing as a light black? Well, that's what we're doing here, because these cylinders The call out for it is for flat black, and we have substituted our gray for that. Now, along with our cylinder heads, we also need to take care of our clutch housing here, and also that shift tower that's on that clutch housing. So we're going to come back in and kind of clean that up as well, just like we did our cylinder heads. And I will tell you that since that metallic charcoal gray that we sprayed on there is kind of a satin, almost gloss or semi-gloss kind of feel to it there. It's really smooth. We'll probably have to put a couple of coats of this on there, but that's okay because these acrylic paints, and these are craft acrylic paints, water-based. They when they dry, they are really super smooth. So we also got some overspray here on this tube, and I have no idea what these tubes are. So we'll just go ahead and take care of that too. All right, so now that we're done with the main portion of the engine for now, we'll set that aside, and we'll go ahead and turn our attention to this coolant tube. Now it connects to the two heads on top of the engine from the radiator. Yeah, from most of everything I've seen, it's supposed to be black, but we're just going to paint it gray. And the reason why is because I really want this kind of stand out a little bit, so a little bit more of that artistic license there. We're just going to kind of do our own thing here a little bit, try to bring this little detail, which I think is really good, out, so it's more visible, especially against those really dark cylinder heads there. So we're going to paint this gray. Now we're not going to paint the very end of it because it's actually a hose there, which we're going to paint a different color. Okay, so back to a reference photo. I have circled them in red here, and you can see at the top we have our upper radiator hose, which I'm sure on the original vehicle was not this kind of orange neoprene hose that's on this restored vehicle, as well as these other two down next to the water pump going from the front head to the rear head. You can see we have two small hose sections there too, so we're going to have to paint those in because they're not actually modeled on the vehicle. So let's go ahead and take care of that. So for our hoses, we're going to be using Testors flat rubber. Yeah, I know it is a enamel paint, but that's what we're going to use because, well, it's not black, and that'll give us a little bit more color variations here. And we're going to paint our fan belt with this color as well. So we'll go ahead and get that fan belt taken care of there. For some reason, it kind of bothers me. So I want to get that painted in. And don't forget about painting the inside sections there as well for our fan belt. And our hoses. So this is the upper radiator hose. That was that funny orange neoprene replacement hose that they had on the restored vehicle. I'm sure in 1917 it wasn't like that. So we're going to just paint ours this nice rubber color here. Now when it comes to the tubes here that come off of our water pump to our front and rear heads, kind of didn't get a lot of paint on there because of the way I decided to spray this. So what I'm doing here is I'm coming back and I'm kind of reestablishing those tubes so that they're nice and metallic. Trying to get that steel look back there. And especially those flanges that's bolted up to the heads there. We kind of want to get that all kind of, that steel looking color there. So we got to lay this base down before we work on our rubber. Now that dries pretty quick because it is a water-based acrylic, and then we can come back in and work on these little bitty hoses here. And I know it's kind of hard for you to see what I'm doing, but we are just going to establish those coolant hoses there. And so that's the rubber parts that we're painting in because the model doesn't really depict that, but we know from looking at photographs of the historical vehicle that it actually had that. And so I think that would be a good detail for us to go ahead and add. And with that done, we'll have to set that aside and let that dry because this is an enamel paint that we use there for the rubber. Moving on to our intake. So I think maybe just regular gray for this would be good for our intake tubes. And so I'm just going to use the craft paint here, and this is just regular gray, and we're going to go ahead and put that on. Now it is a flat acrylic paint, so, and it being water-based, it's going to dry pretty quick. So we'll go ahead and take care of this intake tube here. Now when it comes to our carburetor, which is attached to that intake tube, we're just going to use this silver paint here. This is a metallic silver here, and I'm just going to paint in our carburetor there. I'm not real sure about the color there. It might be a little bit bright, but I'm thinking that, you know, these were often small cast items, so yeah, maybe the silver's okay. So one thing's for sure, it's going to give us a little bit more color differential here when we come to look at the engine, something to actually draw your eye. So we'll go ahead and paint this silver color. Okay, so let's go back to our hoses. I think I've given it enough time to dry. I'm using the smallest brush I have. it's a little bit wide, but I think it'll be all right. Now this is Tester Silver here that we're using. It's an enamel paint, and I want to use this, and hopefully I don't screw it up too bad. And we're just going to paint some silver stripes here around the ends of our hoses where these clamps would be. And, you know, if you don't know distances and stuff, you can go back to your reference photos and see about where they're located. So we're just going to paint this around. And this is going to represent those hose clamps. You can't have coolant hoses without hose clamps. So if you're going to paint in the hose clamps, you really need to paint in these, the hoses. If you're going to paint in the hoses, you got to have hose clamps. So we're going to go ahead and do that. And hopefully I get this fairly straight here. And that adds a nice little detail there. So yeah, that looks good. I'm kind of pleased with that. Well, we can't leave it there, of course. We got to go back to those little bitty hoses that we got coming off of our water pump plumbing there. And we're going to need to go ahead and establish those. So be very careful when you're doing fine details like this. Don't push too hard against your brush because that'll cause the brush to fan out and it will be inconsistent. And I know it can be a little bit difficult, especially when you're trying to paint round objects like this. Just kind of drag the brush across it and don't press because you'll get a bulge in that, and we don't want that. So there we go. That's my meager attempt there at hose clamps. So that looks pretty good though. I'm kind of happy with how that's come out. Okay, so since we've used enamels and acrylics on this, we need to seal everything in. So I want to use this gloss clear here because we are going to use some panel liner on this, which is an enamel-based product, and we don't want it to react with the enamels we already got on there. So we got to put that little barrier coat on there, and the gloss clear will help the flow of our panel liner later. So while that's drying, let's turn our attention here to our exhaust. So this is more of that craft paint, and this is rust, and it is a water-based acrylic. Now I could have sprayed this on, but I decided rather than go through the whole procedure of mixing and doing all that stuff and having to clean the airbrush, it's just much easier to paint it on with a brush. And it's okay if you got, you know, little brush strokes and stuff like that in there because rusted surfaces are not going to be smooth anyway. So we'll just go ahead and paint our exhaust and our muffler and our exhaust manifold here, this base rust color, because we're going to do some things to it to help bring it a little bit more lively. Is that what we're going to do? Yeah, something like that. And by that, I mean using dry pigments here. So this is Vallejo's Rust and Corrosion set. You get the 4 different dry pigments here in this set. And, well, it's a real, I really like using these. And here you can see the colors. We got brown iron oxide, old rust, rust, and new rust. And there is the part number for it. For the Vallejo set, and if you flip it over right here, it's ART 73.194, just in case you guys want to use it. And here we have those pigments, and I've added a couple of others. You know, there's an ochre and a black also in my little palette, but I'm using water as a carrier for a dry pigment. And for you guys that's been around the channel for a little while, you've kind of seen me do this before. This allows me to actually place the pigments right where I want them, and I can kind of brush and blend them in, and I got a lot of control this way. And with that, you got to kind of wait for that water to evaporate and dry out so that you can see exactly what you've got going on there with the pigment. So I picked the, I don't know which one, but it's the one a little bit lighter than our rust paint that we put on. And with it drying, you can see that we've got that nice little color deviation going on there. And so now the cool thing about this is since it's a dry pigment, you can kind of wash it off if you don't like it. And so we're going to come back in with the next lightest color here. And add a little bit more color interest just in certain little areas there. And I'm really I have these pigments thinned quite a bit with the water. And we're just going to place it on, you know, like bends and the little knuckles areas there of our exhaust manifold where it comes out of the cylinder heads there. Now you can do this as much as you want or as little as you like. I'm going to add just a little bit of black pigment here in a couple of spots. Most of this is not going to be seen because it's going to be underneath the truck, but I just like doing it anyway. So we'll add these little bitty darker areas as well. Kind of give us more variety here. Now once we let it dry, we can come in with a soft brush and just kind of blend this a little bit. And that's what we're doing here. Don't use a good brush to do this, but yeah, a little bit of blending here and there, kind of smooth out those hard edges that you can get from using the water, because wherever the water stops, the pigment does too. So we'll just smooth and blend this out a little bit. Now the water is going to evaporate pretty quick. So the next step I am going to do is I'm going to come back in with a little bit of enamel thinner here and just place it very carefully there, really lightly, and let it kind of wick through all of our pigments there. And that'll kind of fix this into place for us so that our pigments aren't going to rub off on us later, because we are going to be handling this a little bit, you know, when we go to install it on the vehicle. And there we go. That's what we've got once the enamel thinner has taken and gone off, you know, kind of dried there. So as you can see, it looks a little rusty. So I kind of like that. So with that done, we can actually go ahead and attach our intake manifold that has our updraft carburetor attached to it. So we'll just put that into place here, and I think to me extra thin will be fine. It kind of dissolves the paint a little bit there because to me extra thin is a solvent, and yeah, that'll stick it right in place. So yeah, that's going to work for us. There we go. That's kind of what that's supposed to look like. Well, that's kind of what this one looks like anyway. All right, so we've given plenty of time for our gloss clear coat here to dry. You can see it's nice and shiny, and that's going to help us with our panel liner. So first up is going to be this gray panel liner. So as you can see here, this is Mr. Hobby, and that's WC06, and it's a Mr. Weathering color. So we're going to really want to shake this up and get those pigments floating around so that we can go ahead and apply that. I'm just using a small brush here. We don't have very much to do, but we do need to be kind of pinpoint accuracy. That kind of helps with the cleanup. And it is an enamel product, so we'll be able to clean up anything that kind of gets where we don't want it with enamel thinner. And I really want it to flow around the tops of the heads here to kind of bring out those details, because the heads are really, really dark. So using this gray kind of brings out those details. And then, of course, we got our bolt detail on the top of the heads. We'll catch all of that. And we don't want to forget about our flywheel housing, which is also this really, really dark color. So that gray will help show all of that. And then for cleaning up, a little bit of enamel thinner on a clean brush, and we can just come in and clean up any little areas where we got a little bit too much there. And I did get quite a bit on the heads as well, so I'll clean that up, and then we'll straighten out anything like these little access plates or cover plates that's on the side of the heads. We can clean those up too. So next up, we're going to use the black panel liner here from Tamiya, which I have thinned out considerably because my panel liner is a little bit old when it comes to the Tamiya panel liner. So I've added a little bit of enamel thinner to it to help it flow. And we're going to do that on all of the metallic gray or metallic charcoal color there around the block and the front cover, and the pulleys and all that. Just kind of bring those details. I know most of this is never going to be seen, but that's okay. It's good practice for us. And because for the parts that are going to be seen, you add those little shadows and everything, and it helps bring out those lines. So yeah, I think it's going to help. Now with that done, and once it's dry, there we go. That's what we've got going on there. It is a bit shiny right now. So we're going to have to take care of that. So to tone everything down, we're going to use Vallejo matte acrylic varnish here. And this will give us a more a flat color. Actually, it's kind of a satin when we get done with it. And I have mixed it up for the airbrush too. And there we are. We sprayed it, and that looks pretty good. I'm kind of happy with that. So you can actually pick out the details because we use the gray panel liner there on the black surfaces. And not that you can see too much of the black panel liner, but it's there. Now our fan, I did spray it with the gloss Vallejo clear coat, and I'm going to leave it like that because oftentimes these fans are, they got a little bit of sheen to them, so it kind of gives it a satin look. So we can go ahead and affix that now to the engine since the engine's all done. And I just want to make sure that it's nice and square. And there we go. So make sure it's all lined up. Now I don't think we're going to have an issue. We'll see when we go to do our final assembly, but I don't think, because of the way the engine actually goes into the frame, that it's going to be an issue and it's going to have any problems making contact with the fan shroud when we go to assemble that. So here we go with our top coolant tube there. I just want to kind of get a look at what our different color choices have been and how that's going to look on the model itself. And that really looks good. I mean, we can see and differentiate between that top coolant tube, and we got those nice coolant hose clamps and hoses and all that going on there. So that looks nice. And we'll go ahead and kind of stick our exhaust manifold with our intake manifold on it here and make sure that everything lines up good. That's primary because we don't want to have any issues when we go to install this into the vehicle. And as you can see, that's kind of what we got going on. So I do like all the different colors and everything there. It's not in your face, but it could be pretty much realistic, I guess. Well, okay, we got our canvas all done, and I think we pretty much got those seams taken care of there. Less pronounced than they were before, and it always helps when you get everything unified with a good coat of primer there so that those little things don't show up. So that'll be good. Now we primed all that in gray. The rest of the vehicle, to include the engine, which we just finished painting, we did all these in the Panzer Gray, the dark Panzer Gray, and we used that type of primer because we're going to be doing some pre-shading and then some probably post-shading and all that good stuff. So that came out pretty good. That stuff goes on nicely. And then, of course, we do have our engine, which we finished up in this episode. And as you can see on the fan there, I don't know if you can see it or not. Sorry, it's not focusing very well. Well, it's black. So anyway, it's got it's kind of a satin look to it. So if you've seen most engine fans, it's usually kind of how they come out. You know, even though they may be painted black, it's usually like a satin look instead of a real flat look. So I kind of left it like that. And then, of course, we got all of our, get this turned around, and our exhaust, along with our intake. I'm not real sure about the color of our updraft carburetor, but, you know, I'll think about it. We can always change that. And now that's not glued on. Our exhaust is not glued on. That's because when we go to install it, that'll have to be installed after the engine goes in. And then, of course, our coolant tube on top. That's not glued on either, right, or cemented. But the fan is cemented, and it shouldn't be a problem sticking that into place there with the fan shroud when we get around to doing that final assembly thing. So that's it for this video. Special thanks to all my subscribers. It's because of you guys I keep making these videos, and I hope that you enjoyed this one. And if you are new to the channel and not a subscriber, I hope today I earned your subscription. So leave me a comment if you enjoy what you see, or if you have built this kit before. I would like to hear from you. And yeah, so I guess I'll see you guys next Friday. So till then, you guys stay safe.